They say life has a funny way of showing you who you really are. I used to think I had everything figured out: marriage, motherhood, stability. But nothing. Nothing prepares you for the moment when something inside you breaks, so quietly, you don't even hear it until it's already done. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even a thought, until it became the only thing I could think about. I remember that night like it just happened. Not because of what we did, but because of what I felt. And what I didn't feel for so long before that. My husband wasn't home. Just saying those words now brings a lump to my throat. Not because he wasn't where he was supposed to be, but because in his absence, something happened that I still haven't been able to forgive myself for. And no, this isn't the kind of story you expect to hear from a woman like me. I'm not proud of it. I'm not asking for pity. But I am asking for honesty. Because maybe you've been there too. Maybe not exactly like me, but close enough to understand that ache that keeps you up at night. The ache of being touched by eyes that see you, when no one else does anymore. That night started like any other. I was folding laundry, the hum of the dryer in the background, dinner plates still sitting in the sink. The smell of rain outside, soft and earthy, like memories trying to resurface. And my son. He was just down the hallway, in his room. Or at least, I thought he was. We hadn't even spoken much that day. Just passing comments. Quiet nods. The kind of silence you only get when two people know each other too well, or not at all. He was 19. Smart. Sensitive. The kind of boy who always held the door open for others, who always made sure I had the remote, even when we watched shows he didn't care about. But that night, he looked at me differently. And something in me shifted, too. I didn't see it coming. I swear I didn't. But maybe, deep down, I felt it. The way you feel a storm in your bones before it even clouds the sky. That night, the air was heavy. And not just because of the weather. It was me. It was him. It was everything we weren't saying. And in that silence, something whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It wasn't anything that could be seen. But it was there. A moment. A breath. A look that lasted just 2 seconds too long. And in those 2 seconds, the foundation of everything I thought I was, everything I believed I could never cross, began to tremble. I didn't touch him. He didn't touch me. Not then. But something touched us both. Something raw. Something real. Something terrifying. And I wish I could tell you it ended there. I wish I could tell you I laughed it off, closed the door, put on my robe, and went to bed like nothing ever happened. But that would be a lie. And this story? It deserves the truth. If you've ever found yourself torn between what's right and what's real, between duty and desire, then stay with me. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because here, we don't just share stories. We dive into the ones that haunt us. You won't want to miss what happens. I'm 38. Married for 15 years. A mother. A wife. A homemaker. But not once in the last few years had I felt like a woman. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and someone notices, not just because you're there, but because you exist? That feeling had vanished. My husband, Michael, he's the type of man people admire. Well-dressed. Always composed. He provides. He protects. He does everything he's supposed to do. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. He leaves early. Comes back late. Work trips. Meetings. Conferences. And when he's home, he's not really home. I'd talk. He'd nod. I'd ask questions. He'd grunt answers. There were no fights. No screaming. Just absence. A slow, silent absence that wrapped itself around my days. I'd catch him glancing at his phone more than he ever looked at me. Sometimes I wondered if there was someone else. But truthfully, it hurt more to realize there probably wasn't. He just forgot how to see me. Our bed became a space between two people who used to reach for each other. Now we just turned our backs and stared at different walls. And then, there was my son, Ethan, 19. home from college for the summer. He'd always been the gentle one. Quiet. Thoughtful. He wasn't loud or reckless like other boys his age. He noticed things. He remembered when I mentioned my favorite tea. He'd bring it to me without asking. He'd linger at the doorway when I was cleaning. Offer to help. Sit with me while I watched those shows his father always rolled his eyes at. And lately, I started noticing something else. The way his eyes stayed on me when I walked past. The silence that stretched between us longer than before. Not awkward. Just full. I told myself it was nothing. That I was tired. That I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew better. There was one afternoon, I was in the kitchen, wearing a sundress. Nothing special. Nothing meant to draw attention. But I dropped something, and as I bent to pick it up, I felt it. His gaze. I turned. He looked away quickly. But not fast enough. And that moment, it stayed with me. It followed me through the rest of the day. Into the evening. Into my dreams. Our home. Our quiet little suburban home. It looked perfect from the outside. But inside, it echoed. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from people who stopped reaching for each other. I smiled a lot, but only when someone was looking. I laughed, but it always came a second too late. And Ethan? He noticed. He saw me. I didn't see it then. But maybe I was the one who left the door open. It was a Thursday. Michael had left that morning for another business trip. Just a quick one. 2 nights in Houston, some conference or seminar, he didn't bother explaining. He kissed me on the forehead before he left. Didn't look me in the eye. Didn't ask if I needed anything. Just said, "I'll text you when I land," and closed the door behind him. Ethan and I were alone. It wasn't unusual. Over the years, I'd gotten used to being the only heartbeat echoing through the walls. I made dinner. Nothing fancy. Just pasta, garlic bread, a simple salad. He came down without me calling him. Already felt different. We sat at the table, just the two of us. The only sounds were forks against plates and the faint hum of the refrigerator. And then he asked, "How was your day, Mom?" I froze for a second. Not because the question was strange, but because of how he said it. Slow. Intentional. Like he really wanted to know. I looked up, expecting the usual half-distracted expression. But no, he was looking right at me. Waiting. And without realizing it, I started talking. About the laundry. About a neighbor's cat stuck in the fence. Even about the silly commercial that made me tear up earlier. And he listened. Not politely. Not with eyes glazed over. But with interest. He smiled at parts. Asked follow-up questions. Laughed softly when I rolled my eyes at myself. And, for a moment, I forgot. Forgot that I was just Mom. Forgot that I was usually met with grunts and half-nods. I felt seen. After dinner, I told him I'd clean up. He offered to help. I said no mostly because I didn't want him to see my hands shaking. I needed a moment. Just one moment to breathe and figure out what the hell was happening inside me. Later, I walked into the living room. I was wearing a loose t-shirt and cotton shorts. The kind you throw on when you're not expecting anyone to notice. The TV remote had slipped under the couch. I bent down to get it. And in that pause, I felt it. A stillness behind me. A breath held just a second too long. A gaze. Not quick. Not casual. Deliberate. I turned slightly, just enough to catch the corner of his eye. He looked away. Fast. But the damage was already done. It wasn't just a glance. It was something else. Something curious. Something quiet. Something grown. And in that second, I remembered what it felt like to be looked at with wonder. I stood up slowly. Held the remote tighter than I needed to. My heart was racing. Not because I was afraid, but because I hadn't felt anything in so long. He mumbled something, said he was going to his room. Didn't wait for a reply. And I stood there, staring at the blank television screen, but seeing everything that wasn't being said. I should have walked away. I should have shaken it off. Laughed at myself. Pushed the thought into the back of my mind. But I didn't. And that's where it began. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking of the clock on the wall and the louder ticking in my chest. My thoughts ran wild. Chased each other in circles until morning came too soon. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What was that? Was it a moment? Was it a mistake? Was it nothing, or was it something I'd been quietly craving? Was I flattered? Was it maternal concern twisted into something I didn't recognize? Or had I simply not felt seen in so long that even this accidental shift, this silent pull stirred something I didn't know was still alive in me? I avoided him the next morning. I stayed in my room longer than usual. Pretended to be busy when I wasn't. Kept the kitchen between us like a wall. He noticed. I saw it in the way his eyes followed me as I moved from one corner of the house to the next. He didn't say anything, but silence between two people who are aware. It's louder than words. At one point, I dropped my mug. It shattered. He rushed in from the hallway. You okay? I nodded. Didn't look up. Couldn't. Because I knew, if I met his eyes again, I'd see it. That same flicker from the night before. And worse. He'd see mine. Later that evening, Michael called. He FaceTimed from the hotel. His tie was loose. He looked tired. Long day, he said. Then launched into a story about a client dinner. I listened. Smiled when I was supposed to. Laughed quietly at something that wasn't even funny. And then, nothing. He didn't ask how my day was. Didn't ask about the house. Didn't ask about Ethan. Just said, okay, I should get some sleep, and hung up. And I sat there phone in hand, screen black, still smiling. But my mind was still in that living room. With that remote. With that silence. With that boy. With the eyes that saw me. I hated myself for thinking about it. But hate and hunger, they sometimes wear the same skin. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That I was tired. That it was a moment, nothing more. But I could still feel it. That gaze. That stillness. The way my body responded. Not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition. And that terrified me. Have you ever been caught between shame and desire? Between guilt and need? Type yes if you know that ache. The days that followed were quiet on the surface. I tried to create distance. Started leaving the kitchen before he came in. Kept conversations short, polite. Avoided eye contact like it might set something on fire. But he did the opposite. He started helping more around the house. Little things, taking out the trash before I asked, folding towels I'd left in the dryer, washing the dishes even when it wasn't his turn. He lingered longer in doorways. Offered to drive me to the store when I didn't need a ride. He was near, often. But never close enough for anyone else to notice. Only I could feel the shift. One afternoon, I must have dozed off on the couch. I'd been reading or pretending to. The warmth of the afternoon sun, the dull ache in my chest, I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep. When I opened my eyes, the room was dim. Quiet. I blinked. And that's when I noticed it. A blanket had been placed gently over me. I didn't hear footsteps, but I knew he had done it. I could feel the care in it. Then, just faintly, I heard the soft sound of footsteps retreating down the hallway. Slow, hesitant, like someone trying not to be caught, doing something they didn't yet understand. The next morning, he said nothing about it. Neither did I. But later, as I passed by the kitchen table, he looked up from his cereal and said, "You look really peaceful when you sleep." I froze. It was simple, casual, but it pierced me. My heart, it didn't just race. It panicked. Like it knew something was coming it couldn't stop. I managed a smile. A weak one. Didn't know what to say. Because in that moment, that gentle, effortless moment, he gave me something no one had in years. Tenderness. Why did that feel like the most intimate thing anyone had said to me in years? That night, a storm rolled in. Heavy rain against the windows. Low rumble of thunder in the distance. Michael texted me, flight delayed. Might not be home until tomorrow night. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then I lit a few candles. The power flickered twice, then went out completely. I sat on the floor of the living room, wrapped in an old sweater, the glow of candlelight casting shadows on the walls. Ethan walked in, holding his phone flashlight. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. He sat down beside me. Close. Too close. I could smell his shampoo. Feel the heat of him at my side. The flickering candlelight danced across his face, and suddenly, he wasn't just my son. He was a man, with quiet thoughts, and questions in his eyes. We didn't talk. Not at first. Just sat in the soft silence of storm and shadows. And then he reached for my hand. And I didn't pull away. The rain outside grew heavier. Each drop against the window sounded louder, sharper, like the world itself was holding its breath. The room flickered in candlelight, soft shadows dancing across the walls, across us. He was still holding my hand. His thumb brushed over my knuckles slowly, as if trying to memorize the shape of something he never expected to touch. We didn't speak. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore, it was full. Heavy. Like it had been waiting for this moment to finally arrive. And then he asked quietly, barely above the storm, "Why do you always seem so sad when Dad's away?" My breath caught. I turned to him. And for a second, I forgot how to breathe. His face was soft, open, curious, and too knowing. I tried to answer, but nothing came out. Just a whisper of air, caught behind everything I hadn't said for years. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. I don't know. A moment passed. Thunder rumbled in the distance. And then he reached up, touched my face. Gently, like I was something delicate. Something that might disappear if held too tightly. His fingers rested on my cheek, warm and unsure. And I didn't flinch. I didn't lean away. I just stayed still and let it happen. My whole body tensed. Not in fear, but in anticipation. In recognition. I whispered, "This is wrong," but even as I said it, I didn't move. And neither did he. We just breathed. And then the kiss. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forceful. It was tender. Hesitant. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for permission, it waits for it to be given through silence. And I let it happen. I let years of being unseen fall away. I let the absence of love in my marriage be filled by something that wasn't supposed to be there. Something confusing. Something human. Something so quiet. It thundered inside me louder than the storm outside. His lips trembled against mine. He pulled back. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because in that one moment, I forgot the world outside that room even existed. Don't miss the twists and aftermath. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because sometimes we cross lines we didn't know existed. The morning after, everything felt different. Not the house. Not the walls. Just us. I stayed in bed longer than usual. Listened for sounds, footsteps, movement, the clink of dishes, but everything felt muffled. Like the house itself was holding its breath. When I finally came out, he was already in the kitchen. He didn't look up. Didn't say good morning. I moved quietly, like a guest in my own home. He finished his cereal and rinsed the bowl without a word. Then he left the room. And just like that, we were strangers. All day, we danced around each other. In silence. He avoided my eyes. And I avoided the mirror. Because I couldn't bear to see the version of myself that had let that moment happen. Not just let it, wanted it, welcomed it. I tried to clean, fold laundry, wipe down the counters. But every surface I touched felt foreign. Every ordinary object, a reminder of the life I was supposed to be living. the one I had carefully constructed and just cracked open with a single choice. I found myself staring at our wedding photo. It hung on the wall in the hallway, framed in silver, slightly crooked like always. We looked so young, so sure. His arm was around me, and I was smiling like I had the whole world in my hands. And maybe I did back then. But now I felt like a ghost of that woman. Like someone who had watched her own life from a distance for too long. I had everything I thought I wanted. A home, a marriage, a son I was proud of. And yet I still felt like nothing. The door opened that evening. Michael was back. His suitcase bumped the entryway as he rolled it in. He smiled, tired, absent, like always. "Hey," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. His arms came around me, and I flinched. Not because I didn't love him, not because I was afraid, but because someone else, his son, had made me feel alive for a fleeting moment. And that truth, that unbearable, burning truth, sat between us like a second shadow. He didn't notice. He never noticed. Not when I cried quietly in the shower. Not when I laughed without meaning it. Not when I looked at him and saw a wall instead of a man. He unpacked, told me about the hotel, the people he met, the wine he drank. I nodded. I smiled. But inside, I was unraveling. Was I a monster? Or just broken? I've asked myself that question every night since. Some nights, the answer feels clear. Other nights, it slips between my fingers like sand. I replay that night over and over in my mind. The rain, the candlelight, his hand, my stillness, the kiss. Not just the kiss, but the moment before it. That breathless second when I could have stepped back, could have stopped everything, and didn't. I hear his voice. "Why do you always seem so sad when Dad's away?" It wasn't just a question. It was an invitation. To be known. To be felt. To be understood in a way that had nothing to do with titles or roles, just truth. And I took it. I didn't say no. I didn't walk away. I stayed. I allowed. I felt. Now I live inside the weight of that choice. I've thought about telling Michael. About sitting him down and saying the words that have been scraping the inside of my chest. But what would I say? I crossed a line, one I can't uncross. It wasn't physical, not fully, but it was real. And I don't know what that makes me. Every version of that conversation ends in ruin. So I say nothing. And Ethan. He's not the same either. He walks quieter now, speaks less. Doesn't linger in doorways or offer help anymore. His eyes don't search for mine. They avoid them. It's like he aged overnight. Like he saw something in himself he wasn't ready to see. Or something in me he didn't want to understand. We don't talk about it. Not even in passing. But the silence now is different. It's not avoidance. It's punishment. A quiet reminder that some lines, once crossed, never disappear. They stay, burned into the space between two people who should have never stood that close. Some secrets aren't meant to be shared. They're meant to be carried like stones in your lungs. Heavy, silent, and always just beneath the surface. Have you ever felt something that you wished you could unfeel? Something that brushed against your heart so quietly you didn't notice it slipping in until it was already tangled inside you? I keep asking myself, was I to blame? Or was I just lonely in the wrong moment? I didn't go looking for it. I didn't plan it. But it came to me anyway, soft, quiet, human. And I let it stay. For a second too long. Tell me in the comments, was this betrayal? Or was it just a cry for connection, from a woman who forgot what it felt like to be seen? If stories like this stir your soul, if they leave you breathless, aching, or just a little bit changed, like this video and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Loneliness doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, in the form of someone you thought you knew. Someone who looked at you one day and saw more than they were supposed to. Sometimes, the greatest damage isn't from what we do, but from what we allow. From the moments we don't stop, the silences we don't fill, the gazes we return when we know we shouldn't. So, if you've ever stood at the edge of a boundary and didn't know whether to step back or fall in, know this: some moments are unforgettable, but not all of them are meant to be remembered.